how do attackers do what they do? I bring it up is because it's impossible to defend against attacks if you don't know the attacks. So being able to understand how attackers do what they do is critical for any blue team, at least in my opinion anyway. People think that AI is going to solve everything. You still need the basics of cybersecurity. You still need IT asset management. You still need to know what's on your network. You still need vulnerability management. You still need your existing infrastructure before you start going into AI-based solutions. Work on your fundamentals first before you start going into AI, because as of this point, I believe that AI is going to more augment what you already have, but you have to have something first, right? It's not going to be able to say, hey, we're going to solve everything. You still need a supportable infrastructure for you to gain benefit from.
Welcome back to the TechTual Talk podcast. Well, I'm your host, HD, and we got another great episode for you guys today. We got a lovely guest today named Mr. Ryan Smith, and today we're going to be talking about security and AI. But before we get into the episode, guys, if you're watching on YouTube right now, please hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, hit the noti bell so you can be notified when I'm dropping our content, and leave us a comment. It really helps us out in the algorithm, and share it out for the people that need to hear this information. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please follow us, leave us a review. It helps us out in the podcast analytics. All right, so we are going to be talking about security operations and artificial intelligence. And we know that buzzword of AI is like everywhere. You cannot probably look at anything without AI, all these different AI tools. Listen, the way I'm able to do this podcast mostly by myself is because of AI. So let's introduce our guest for you guys today. Ryan, how you doing, man?
I'm okay, HD. Thanks for having me on the podcast. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I think we scheduled this out about a month ago, I think, maybe. Yeah, and once we talked and you were telling me like what your company Qfunction is, built around, I was like, I definitely see like a lot of use cases for this. Like even in our emails last night when I was talking to you about the different questions that I may ask you that I could perceive that like AI could be useful for.
Yes,
I felt was like pretty cool. But could you introduce yourself to the listeners and the guests, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like HG said, pleasure to meet you guys. I'm Ryan Smith, and I've been in cybersecurity for around 8 years now, I think. Like, yeah, it's been around 8 years. I got my start within computer science, like, yeah, within college, majored in that, went over to various internships, got into software engineering, did system monitoring, all that good stuff, general IT work just to kind of, get the feel for IT. And then I did all kinds of work in there, wrote programs, like I said, system monitoring, all of this good stuff. And then around 2016 is when I pivoted over to cybersecurity, because there was just something about it that was just very interesting to me. So I started playing around with some of the tools. I started watching, various shows, the typical shows that have all kinds of hackers in them. And I was like, man, that looks awesome. Like, yeah, I need to be in that field. So around 2016 is when I pivoted over to cyber, and I've been there ever since. Like, yeah, I've done various roles within cyber, vulnerability management, SIEM administration, threat hunting, penetration testing, red teaming, all that stuff. So I've done a lot within cyber. So it's a good field. Like, yeah, it's a good field.
That's cool, man. Yeah, it seems like you got into cyber like really like about a year before I got in. And then I was looking through your experience, but we'll touch on that in a second. I briefly wanted to talk about, I guess, what made you want to major in computer science in college.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's video games. Honestly, it's video games. If you're a millennial like I am, I'm 34. Like, yeah, you probably got your start in computers because of video games. So I started off with the Super Nintendo, right? Kind of progressed to Nintendo 64 and just all other consoles. And then I was like, man, this is where it's at. There's always been a comfort for me there when it comes to computers, video games. I just always felt at peace there. Kind of going into different worlds and seeing, just be able to play these games, right? Escape my own reality. Then around 7th grade is when I actually started doing my own programming. So there's a language called Visual Basic. Like, yeah, I don't think anyone uses it today outside Excel, right? I think Excel.
On Visual Basic, they taught us that in college, and I don't know why.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So I got my start there, and then from there I kind of just went off. Right. I've My love for computers never really stopped. Like it kind of just progressed, especially with the rise of the internet over the 90s. I've broken my fair share of computers because of like yeah, just from experimenting within computers, and that's where I got my expertise, and I just never stopped loving them. So I was like, hey, this is obviously my career path. I saw it, everyone else around me saw it. So I kind of just went into computer science, right? And then from there, did all the programming, did all the math, like, yeah, all that good stuff. And that's what caused me to go in that direction.
That's dope. And this is a question that wasn't on the question list I gave you, but I just, sorry, I just thought about it while you were talking.
Yeah.
I follow this guy on TikTok. He does governance, risk, and compliance work in
Okay.
cybersecurity. And he was talking about the different majors of computer science, information systems, and all these majors. And he was saying, hey, these majors don't teach basic Excel and other type of data classes or whatever to help you with data. And I was like, well, unfortunately, I said, well, fortunately for me, my very first class in my information systems course was pretty much like an IT course on how to use PowerPoint, Excel, Visual Basic, all that different stuff. So I was like, they actually showed us that, where I was like, for the first time ever using VLOOKUPs.
Right. Mm.
So I was just like, they showed us that. So I want to ask, like, did you learn about any of that stuff in your course, or was it more so like, hey, you could use Python or something? They got a library that can help you with this data visualization.
That's a great question. So, like I said, I majored in computer science, right? I entered in college. That's what I declared as. I actually got scared, like, and the reason why that I say that is that I got scared is because I got intimidated by all the math, the science, and all that. So, before even starting my first course, I actually pivoted over to information systems, right? And that's CIS, computer and
Mm-hmm.
information systems. And I stayed a year in there within computer information systems. And during that time is where they kind of taught you, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, all that. So that's where I got the actual knowledge. After that year, I said, this isn't really for me. I'm going to take the risk and just go to computer science, even though I may have not been the best, person at math at that time. And but going back to computer science, they don't teach you that, because what computer science focuses more on is the theory behind computing, right? When it comes to writing programs, when it comes to learning algorithms and all that. So you're not going to get that more practical experience with like the Microsoft suite of tools, right? They're more kind of teach you about theory about computing, because when it comes down to it, if you kind of learn the theory behind it, you can kind of apply it to different places. They're more teaching you how to learn, like, yeah, as opposed to specific tool sets, right? It's because when, as you already know, HD, technology changes all the time, like, yeah, right, like you're always expected to keep up with certain trends, certain things. And computer science, at least for me, prepared me for that, right? Because obviously back in 2012, when I graduated, I knew nothing about AI, right? Like, yeah, but having that background when it comes to programming and Python and just general mathematical concepts, that applies no matter what, right? It does not matter what type of computing field that you're actually in. It's always going to apply just that base knowledge that you get from that. So, but to answer your question, in CIS they taught you it, but not in computer science.
Cool. That's good. It's funny because like for the reasons why you went back to computer science is the reasons why I just stayed in CIS, because I was like, the teachers, the professors there, a lot of them that speak English for like computer science. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna stay right here with the business folks, because I
Is
was
that right?
like, these
I
soft
hear
skills
you on that.
serve me well. So, but so after you finished the college, I see that you got your start pretty much like in software development. And how was that developing software? And I'm pretty sure it's kind of helped you out kind of in what you do now. Today's sponsor is Qfunction. It's 2024 and AI is all the rage right now. But did you know that AI can also help you in security operations? Let's check out what Qfunction can offer for you for security operations. Qfunction performs cybersecurity differently by providing threat hunting and user behavior analytics solutions that utilize your existing cybersecurity tools and data, eliminating the need to deploy entirely new products into your environment. All of Qfunction solutions are implemented directly into your existing on-prem and or cloud environment. Qfunction provides full transparency for any AI models created for your environment. You will have complete visibility into the training utilized for the model training process, as well as deployment of the models. Get a free evaluation to see how AI can work for your cybersecurity environment by contacting Qfunction at qfunction.ai/contact.
Right. Yeah. So, for college, like, they kind of taught you, they kind of geared you towards software engineering, or at least computer science did, right? Being in that field is different from college, because college is kind of like, hey, write this program, right? Like, do this program for this assignment and turn it in, and you get a grade for it, right? Software engineering is a different beast. You have to go through the whole engineering life cycle process. You have to define your requirements. You have to have your stakeholders in the actual project. You have to program on a schedule, right? And there was something about that I just personally didn't particularly care for. Like, I think that I liked coding, but not in a more official capacity, right? Like, yeah, because there's just something about it. I was like, I kind of want to just do my own thing there. So that's why I actually left software engineering not too far after starting it, because very quickly I learned that this is not for me. Like, yeah, I can't see myself doing this for years in and years out. It just doesn't fit me, even though this is what I've been trained for, technically, right? So that's when I went back to the whole general IT route, because I did IT internships, like, yeah, a lot of different internships in college. So I knew what to expect from the IT field. So I was like, I'm gonna go back over here, like, yeah, and see what happens here. And that's kind of my life in software in engineering. But I'm always going to like programming. I'm always going to like doing that stuff, but not in a quote unquote official capacity, or rather a software engineering capacity.
Yeah, I've had people that a couple of episodes ago, my guest used to be a software engineer at Microsoft, and then now she's doing product management for the NBA. So
Yes.
she's kind of like switched that to doing all that software engineering stuff too. But she says she still wants to help code from time to time, and they won't let her. So yeah, I definitely can see that, because I think it gets to the point where, I don't know, maybe your creativity may feel like it's stifled a little bit or whatever, based on the confines of that what they have for you. So maybe that's one of the things that you guys were seeing in roles like that.
Exactly. And because again, you're coding for a reason, right? Like, yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's why you're employed. But like you said, the creativity kind of gets taken away from you, because you have to conform to how they code. Because when it comes to software engineering, you're not coding in a bubble, you're coding with a team. So whatever that you're coding has to be reviewed by others. It has to fit within the code base. You have that version control, all this other stuff, when it comes to software engineering. It's not, it's very methodical, which it should be. Like, yeah, it is, because you're making an actual product that people are using. But at the end of the day, it is a job, and because it is a job, you may not be able to flex those creative muscles that you want to flex.
Yeah. So now let's fast forward. It's
Hmm.
2016, and you're getting your start in cybersecurity. But not
Yeah.
only are you starting in cybersecurity, you're working for NASA.
Yes.
So how were you able to go do cybersecurity for NASA?
Yeah, good question. So, like I said, 2012 is when I got my start within IT. That IT role, I was a contractor at JPL NASA, right? So when I was getting my experience within IT, I was doing that at JPL, only in a contractor capacity. So pivoting over to cyber wasn't really that hard for me, because I already knew the players over there anyway. It was more a matter of just expressing my interest to move in that direction, and then have them give me some work, right, to be able to kind of prove myself, show that, hey, I can be useful here, right? So it was a matter of starting within IT and then pivoting over to cyber. But again, I was already at JPL that entire time anyway, so I knew the people there.
I think that's a important thing. I know my guests, well, not my guests, but like my listeners, my watchers, they've probably seen me 1,000 times talking about that networking piece of
Yes.
getting your job, and
Yes.
how important that is, of just somebody, like, shout out to Dewan Lightfoot. I stole this phrase from Hugh. He
Mhm.
said, "It's not who you know, but who knows you."
Yes.
So the
Exactly.
people that know of you and know the things that you can do makes it easier for you to get jobs.
Yes, and yeah, it's who you know, or rather, who knows you, right? And that was very important for me to know. And sometimes I still forget that, right? You know, you can be the most technical person, the most capable person in the world, but if no one likes you, or if no one wants to work with you, it doesn't mean much there, right? Because at the end of the day, you know, you have to work with people. That's what we do. That's what any job is. You know, you need to be able to talk. You need to be able to communicate, you know, your ideas without coming off as rude. Right? So you know, it is who you know, how you present yourself, and who knows you.
Yeah, definitely. So, what different roles did you work while doing cybersecurity at NASA?
Yeah, sure. So I did a number of different things within the cybersecurity group. I did a little bit of vulnerability management. So when it comes to those Nessus scans, right? So you know, running the Nessus scans, you know, interpreting the findings, going back to the various groups at JPL, and then having them remediate their vulnerabilities. Sometimes that's easier said than done because you have some software that can't be remediated, so you have to go in and, you know, work around their limitations, right? Trying to find something to secure it while not impacting a production environment. So I did that. I did SIEM administration. That was my biggest role there. So Splunk, like, yeah, I don't know if the listeners are familiar with that, but you know, did a lot of you know, data onboarding, data visualizations, just a lot of SIEM administration, because our SOC team utilized that as well in order to, you know, facilitate their SOC operations. So did that, did some threat hunting, so proactively finding threats in the environment. Because when it comes down to it now, I mean, cybersecurity is kind of focused more on a proactive approach as opposed to reactive. So, you know, our tools tell us that everything for the most part. Our lifeblood in cybersecurity is tools, right? We have a tool for everything. But a lot of those tools don't catch everything. So you have to have people who understand attacker behavior in order to find the threats that are associated with that. So I did that, and as a result of that, I also did a little bit of penetration testing, red teaming as well, and that was cool. Like, yeah, that's always cool. Being able to break into something, be able to get like a remote code execution on a system, that's never going to be old. Being able to make a system do something remotely, you know, you'll never forget your first time actually doing that, right? Like, yeah. So you know, I did a number of different roles within cyber, and which kind of got me to where I am today.
No, yeah, the listeners, they're very familiar with Splunk. We talk about Splunk like all the time on this channel. Like,
Good. Yes. Perfect. Like, yeah. So yeah, it's one of the big players out there. Obviously, you have your other scenes as well. There's Sumo Logic and, you know, all the other ones. But I think that Splunk is the whale, the whale in the industry. Just, you know, they have a pretty good foothold on it.
yeah, I
Mm.
run actually on this channel. I actually have I went to Splunk Conf last year, so I have a vlog of me at Splunk Conf on
Nice.
here as well. So, but yeah, I like Splunk. I like Sentinel. I know that CrowdStrike is pretty much working with they got their own sim that they'll probably be releasing pretty soon.
Yes. Mm.
So the good thing is there will be competition. Now, what happens to Splunk now that it's pretty much kind of part of Cisco? That's another thing because we know how that happens when mergers happen. Sometimes
Yes.
product support goes down because I think a lot of people saw that happen when Splunk purchased Phantom to where,
Yes.
Phantom wasn't the same anymore.
Right.
And
Mhm.
similar with, Palo Alto purchasing like Demisto with XOR and stuff. But
Exactly.
it's just the game. It's just the game.
It's all a game. I mean, you know, because that's the nature of the industry, right? You know, because innovation comes from the mid market, right? So Splunk really kind of got the foothold on everything, and then a big company saw that and we're like, hey, we're gonna buy them, right? Like, you know, because they already have a good foothold, you know, and we want to control that market share
Yeah.
ourselves. It's a game. It always will be. It comes with the industry, though. It comes with anything with tech in general, right? So you know, you learn to play it.
Yeah. Before we before we get into the fun stuff about your company,
Mm.
so out of all those jobs that you listed, which one did you probably enjoy doing the most?
Ooh, that's a good question. So the one that I enjoyed doing the most was probably the red teaming, was that probably the penetration testing. Because like I said, who doesn't want to break into a system and do unauthorized stuff. Right. Being able to learn how attackers do what they do, being able to play with these command and control frameworks. Everyone thinks of Metasploit when it comes to penetration testing, right? But there's more out there than just that. When it comes to doing network scanning and finding exploitable vulnerabilities, or even finding the vulnerabilities that scanners may have missed, right? That's always going to be awesome. Be able to compromise a system, laterally move to another one, increase your privilege, and then keep going. Compromise a domain controller. I mean, that's always going to be interesting, right? So, and I think it's beneficial because I think that there's that blue teamers need to have a better understanding of how the attacks work, right? Because I think
Yeah.
from the blue team side, we depend on our tools to tell us everything without having a really intuitive understanding how attackers go about what they do, right? Everyone knows about Mimikatz, right? Like, yeah, Mimikatz being the tool that can extract password hashes, but do people understand why that is, right? Do they understand like NTLM authentication, how it hashes the password, stores it within LSAS, and then that's what Mimikatz accesses, right? Or when it comes to various lateral movement like WMI or PSExec, right? How do attackers do what they do? And the example that I always give is that I used to do Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? I did that like a while ago, and you would get choked, you would get armbarred, you would get hurt, right? You are sore that next day. And why I bring it up is because it's impossible to defend against attacks if you don't know the attacks. If someone's putting you in a RNC or a rear naked chokehold, you need to know how to defend that, where you're safe, and how you can get out of that. Same thing with cybersecurity attacks. How are they attacking you? What are the indicators for this? How can I defend myself? So being able to understand how attackers do what they do is critical for any blue team, at least in my opinion, anyway.
No, I definitely agree. I think that's why you see the rise of tabletops from external parties to give that realistic scenario to the blue team, or trying to
Right.
find out these
Mhm.
different training programs that have these different rooms that kind of walk you through some things that you may see in in an environment. And like you said, like I remember way back in the day, I think it's also the thing too where based on someone's experience can also help them out as well. Far as yes, PS exec can be used
Mhm.
maliciously. However, we also know a lot of help desk people use PS exec.
Yes,
So it's like
exactly.
not thinking every time you see, PS exec is malicious and trying to actually look at the behavior of what someone who would maliciously be using PS exec. Like, if a company I used to work for, they're like big company. I mean, some big companies, a media company, theme parks and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And I'm just saying the mouse ears. So, but let's say a chef or something in the company, you saw them using PS exec, you was like, that shouldn't be happening. That should be a red flag for you. So it's kind of like looking at the historical data of what's going on, and that's how you could possibly tell that something may be malicious or just not making sense. If it's totally like the favorite word people like to use, anomalous, then
Yes.
like go ahead and check it out. And the last question too I was going to ask is well, not the last question I'm going to ask you today, but as far as penetration testing, it's like, what's the difference between like a pen test, a security assessment? I'm trying to see any of the other things that you guys send to like IR and
Mhm.
SOC teams that we may see on the network.
Mhm.
But I guess like what is the biggest difference? Because I always have people say, "Yeah, I want to be a pen tester or whatever," and
Right.
probably kind of distinguishing like between pen testing and just being on the red team and maybe some of the various red team roles that we don't really talk about as much outside of like ethical hacking and pen testing.
Absolutely, that's a good question. So first, we'll start off with the penetration testing, right? So penetration tests are done within organizations in order to find exploitable vulnerabilities in your environment and seeing how far you can take those exploits. So, for example, most like I said, most people have a penetration test once per year or so to kind of just evaluate their defenses, see how things are going. And those penetration tests normally involve, hey, can we compromise the domain controller? right? Or some type of really high value target or asset. So the penetration testers come in, they run their scans, they find vulnerabilities within any Windows systems that will allow them to see a path in order to get to that high value target, right? Now, penetration tests are known by everyone on the security team, as in they're aware of the actual penetration test happening. So there is no, you don't have to worry about detections or anything. You are well aware of what's happening. And what's nice about it is that you can see whether your defenses are actually working because you know exactly what systems are being attacked by or during that penetration test. When it comes to red teaming is a different animal because normally in red teaming, the blue team is not aware or rather is not informed that it's actually happening. That is a very covert operation that says, hey, we have some high value target or some high value asset, but now we're not going to tell the blue team about it. We're going to see if they can actually detect our activity there. And that makes it very, very interesting because now the attackers have to do everything that they can in order to hide their activity from the blue team. And it's very interesting in that regard, right? So it's similar, like yeah, red teaming and penetration testing, but red teaming is more, can we do what we do without anyone seeing us, right? As opposed to penetration testing, where it's like, okay, we know that you're actually here, you're testing these systems, so on and so forth, and you're going to tell us the actual vulnerabilities there. When it comes to security assessments, that's more risk based, that's more GRC based, like yeah, as in, hey, you'll do vulnerability scans, you'll maybe have some interviews with people, seeing what their roles are within the organization and the systems that they control, and you're effectively writing a report outlining the risk and threats that can happen towards whatever environment that you're actually evaluating, right? So that's more of a blue teamish risk assessment activity, as opposed to red teaming and penetration testing, where it's more of that's an attacker activity. We're trying to compromise something here. So yeah, that's the main difference between those three activities.
Got it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was telling somebody the other day I was doing a consultation with someone. I think they had like various experience, and I was telling them like, you possibly could look into doing some like vulnerability management work to where you could possibly potentially pivot onto the red side of things, maybe just kind of just understanding some things with using like a Nessus or a Qualys or Rapid7 and doing all that fun stuff that they get to do, or you know the headaches of what they say when the rubber hits the road,
Yes.
when there's an act of like 0 day and now you guys are figuring scrambling around how you're gonna patch everything, and like you said, hey, this software is not going to work with this version of this, and what is our risk tolerance and acceptance for all this, like all the freaking non-technical but yet business use cases of like what's happening when this stuff going on, and just praying that you know we don't get hit by this stuff. I think that's like the fun part and always the challenge. And if you can figure things out like that, that will stick with you in your career, and it's something you always can talk about. It's like, well, hey, this situation we couldn't do it like this, but we were able to work around it based on XYZ. And so far this company has not been compromised or anything.
Correct. Like, yeah, and that's what a lot of people forget about security as well. Is like, there will be times where your traditional, I guess, methodologies don't work. You just can't, run a vulnerability scan and just tell someone, hey, fix this. I mean, I wish it was that easy, but no,
Right.
there's a lot of back and forth between you, the cybersecurity person, and the stakeholder of that system, and that system may have very critical business operations that, hey, we just can't patch this end of life system. It's going to break everything. Or we can't patch this part of the software because no one maintains it anymore. That person's gone, whoever, wrote the software, right? So how do you work around that? How do you put controls in place so that both sides are happy? Like, yeah, and it's a fine balance there. Like, yeah, you're effectively walking a tightrope between security and usability. So, like, like you said, it is something to put on your resume as well, to be able to say, hey, I did that. I secured this industry. I secured this software assets, whatever, in a way that, hey, all sides were happy.
Facts.
Mhm.
All right. So now, man, you did another role, I think, after NASA for about like a year and some change.
Yeah. Mhm.
What role was that again?
Yeah, so that was a basic security engineer role. That was for a startup. Like, yeah, that was for a startup. That was after my time at JPL, and I stayed there for a year. Unfortunately, that wasn't a good fit. Like, yeah, for what I was looking for. So that's why that one
Yeah.
didn't last too long. And then from there, it was more like I could jump into another cybersecurity role. Like, I could do whatever I wanted as at that point, but I was like, I'm still young, like, yeah, relatively speaking. I'm still young. Why not take a risk? Why not try something completely out of my comfort zone? And that was doing my own business, right? And at that time, I didn't have any idea what I was doing. Like, yeah, and even to today, I still constantly figure things out. As a business owner, you're constantly learning. You'll never know everything. But at that time, I was like, I'm going to give this a shot and see where it goes because I have no idea where I can go with it. Like, yeah, this can be something potentially big because the business before, it was named SmithSec. Yeah, my last name Smith and then Sec for security. And I offered basic security consulting, right? Like, yeah, vulnerability scanning, SIEM, all the stuff that I did at JPL, NASA JPL. And around that time, like, yeah, the whole AI craze was starting to really come into play, and I was like, this is very interesting. Like, yeah, because I like that stuff. I've always been interested in that field. I just didn't know how to get into it or how to apply it. So I spent like the last half of last year just doing anything and everything that I can to get training on that. Right. Like, yeah. And then from there, I was like, there's something here, like, there's definitely something here that can really change cyber. Yeah, but the problem is that a lot of cybersecurity professionals don't know about it because it's so new. When people think of AI, they think of ChatGPT, they think of Gemini, they think of the
Copilot.
more right. Yeah, you think of the large language models, all that. AI is way more than that. Like, yeah, that's just one avenue of it. Like, yeah, so that's why I was like, I have to go in this direction. There's something here. Like, yeah, that I have to explore for my own, benefits and for everyone else's as well, because we can do something with this. Like, yeah, so that's how that was my path from the last startup that I was to where I am now.
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I definitely been wanting to ask you, like, because I've had some questions myself about, I guess, in the way, without you divulging the secret sauce of your company,
Mhm.
but in the way that you are using AI. Like, one of my questions is like, what are some of the use cases for AI in security operations? Because we know a lot of companies are getting stingier with the budgets of hiring people for payroll, but yet we're getting more and more logs in and more things to secure and make sure they're secured, and
Yes.
more things that the threat intel team has to go look for, but you probably only got X amount of people, and more threat hunting, insider risk. We got all these different things, but yet the body count is not changing.
Exactly. And that's the problem. And it's funny because on the Q function blog, I just wrote about that. We as cybersecurity professionals are now expected to do more with less. And it's not fair. It's just not. It only takes one breach to completely dismantle an organization, right? And it's what's known as the defender's dilemma, where attackers only need to find one hole while defenders have to protect everything. There's such an imbalance there, right? So that imbalance can be addressed through AI. Now, your question was, okay, what are the use cases for it? Threat hunting, for example, right? So let's talk about the typical threat hunting process. Threat hunting normally consists of a hypothesis saying that, hey, I think that X is infiltrating our organization, or I think this malicious activity Y is happening in our organization. Second, now you have to collect the logs for that activity, right? And the log collection process can take forever because, like you said, we're collecting way more data now. Our tools are generating way more data now. And for anyone or any team for that matter, to go in there and try to manually analyze that data, you can forget that. You can forget that because there are already too many competing priorities within cyber. We don't have time to proactively look at data. We're trying to keep the lights on, man. We're trying to do our daily SOC activities. We have to monitor the dashboards. We still have to tend to customer complaints. We still have to do everything, right? And you're telling us that we have to be proactive. Get out of here, man. Like, yeah, we can't do that. That's where AI comes in. And let's talk about security in general, right? Cybersecurity in general, how it's a cat and mouse game. When it comes to blue teams and red teams, they're constantly trying to one up each other. So let's talk about Windows XP, Windows 95, Windows 2000. You remember those days, right? Where it's like, you had to have that antivirus software, right? Because you'd have all these viruses come
Yeah,
in,
oh,
and then
Norton.
yeah, exactly. Norton, yeah, semantic, all that stuff. You have to have all the software to combat the different viruses. Attackers saw that and were like, okay, we're going to move past that. Now we're going to start attacking systems in a completely different manner, right? And then now that's blue teamers had to catch up with how attackers were reacting. So that's what brought in EDR, endpoint detection and response solutions. So now you have EDR works by putting in certain hooks into your actual operating system, and those hooks are put in places where hackers tend to interact, right? So we brought up Mimikatz before. So how do you attack? How do you detect Mimikatz? Well, you have some EDR process running on the system that has a hook into the LSAS process. So now, if someone touches that LSAS process, the EDR will be able to hook on to notice that and say, "Hey, why is this happening? Someone should not be accessing this."
Hmm.
Which has now you have alerts for that. So now what we're seeing is that now attackers are trying to have figured out ways to bypass EDR, right? So, how can you bypass EDR? How can you get around those direct hooks into the actual operating system? So now attackers are doing what's known as direct syscalls. And that's what it's effectively, they're bypassing those hooks that are put in by the EDR solution. So now you're doing more like almost assembly level coding, right? And I don't know if you ever coded in assembly. It is not pretty, but if you can, you're very powerful. You're excellent. You are a pro at what you do. So attackers are trying to figure out ways to get around the EDR. So now the blue teamers have to figure out, okay, how do we detect this? Now you start going into behavioral analysis. Earlier, you brought up, let's say a chef is using PS exec, right? That should never happen. That should never happen. And that should never happen because you know the history of that chef. You know the quote unquote normal of that chef, the normal behavior of that. So when people start deviating from that normal, you can start alerting off of that. So, for example, say that some attacker tries to hack some system. Now if the system starts doing anything weird and out of the ordinary, now you have a way to detect that,
Right.
right? And how do you do all of this? You do this with AI. Like, yeah, that's where we're at now. So when it comes to threat hunting, proactively going and analyzing logs, you can now do that with AI. When it comes to user behavior analytics, which is becoming increasingly important within organizations, that's done with AI. When it comes to summarizing loads of information, that's coming now. I think Google just recently released their tool, their cyber threat intelligence tool that incorporates Gemini in
Hmm.
their offering. And I think that just came out. I just saw the news about that not too long ago. But we're going to start seeing that now. That's where things are going, and it's the reason why security vendors have put AI on everything, right? Like, yeah, and I have my own issues with that, but we can get into that as that time comes. But that's what AI can bring organizations. It will allow existing cybersecurity teams to be more efficient with their work and to be able to do more with all that data that they're already collecting.
Got it. So I know most of the listeners, they're familiar with AI in the form of a chat GPT or, like you said, Copilot, Bear, Gemini. You go type a prompt.
Right.
In this instance, when it comes to securing something, how does it work? Does it work is it like, I'm trying to see how I would phrase this. Like, because I know, for example, there are certain security companies to where their tools can work with all the current tools you have.
Right.
And so it just kind of just plugs in and it's feeding everything in. And so that's how it works with like one main thing. But
Mhm.
in this scenario, I guess, how does Qfunction leverage AI to do the things that you're saying that it can do for organization?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one thing, first things off is that Q function, I don't try to hide anything. Like, yeah, there is no secret sauce. Everything that I do, as well as the code that I write, is available for everyone to actually see. I don't try to hide AI from anyone because I think that there's going to be a case where eventually everyone's going to need some type of familiarity with it. But the way that Q function does it is that we take your existing logs, right? So whatever scene that you're using or whatever database that you're using that you want to better secure, we take those logs, right? Whatever you're trying to log, whatever you're trying to learn. The normal behavior for, whether it be systems, whether it be users, we take your existing logs and then train an AI model off of that existing data that you all already have. We can then deploy that model, like, yeah, in how whatever fashion that you actually use, whether you want to deploy it in cloud, whether you want to deploy it on prem. And the way that it will work is that you would take any new incoming logs, feed it to the AI because it knows what's normal for your log set, and then it'll be able to tell you from a scale of 1 to 10, hey, how anomalous is this? Right. So going back to that chef example, if you saw a chef using PS exec, that would probably be a 9 or a 10 on the anomaly scale because that doesn't happen. And because the AI would be able to put that to be able to determine that, you would effectively be able to ingest that right back into your existing scene. And then if you say, hey, if we see an anomaly on a scale ranked from like 8 to 10 or something like that, or depending whatever your organization is, you can go do your own automation from there. You can implement that into your existing SOAR. You can, send an email alert. It is very extensible on how you actually do it. So that's the general purpose or the general way that I do it. In terms of the actual algorithms involved, we can get into that. That's more anomaly detection algorithms, and there are different ways of doing that. But that is the general process of how Q function works. It's very customized to your environment.
Okay. No, I mean,
Mm,
I think that answered everything. I looked at it as like a buffer or some type of proxy that's feeding through. Like once the logs are coming in
yes.
to, they want to go to Splunk. Splunk is right here. Let me see.
Yes.
I got this thing mirroring me, but these are the logs. This is Splunk, and now when we go in the middle, this is Q function.
Yes.
So that's how I understood it. It like goes through there and it's saying, okay, we don't like this one. Send this one to like make a notable alert, and we're gonna look into this some more.
Exactly. Like, yeah. And again, it can be implemented as however you see fit. So the way that I see it is you already have logs going into your scene, right? So the
Right.
way that I see it happening is more just, hey, you have these existing logs, feed them over to the Q function, right? Feed them over to the actual model that knows, and that model can be anywhere. And then from there, that model, like you said, can create a notable. It can create an email, whatever you see fit, because you're only limited by whatever you can program, right? Like, yeah. Or if you want, you can say instead of sending it, just send the data right back into your actual scene. So then now you can do everything from within your scene. And the reason why that's important is because we are flooded. And when I say we, cybersecurity professionals are flooded with different tools. We have, in my
So
opinion,
many.
way too many to look at already. We need to reduce that. And what we're seeing now with vendors is that everyone is sprinkling the letters AI on everything. Unfortunately, it's requiring you to buy an entirely different product to implement in your environment. And for anyone who works in IT in an established company, that's very hard. Implementing an entirely new product is very hard, especially when you have one existing already. You have to
Yeah.
get stakeholder buy-in. You have to have the funds. You have to have the support. It's really hard. So the problem with that is, everyone, at least in my opinion, deserves to be able to get the benefits of AI. So how can you do that? You have to bake it into what you already have. Because if you require someone, some type of SOC personnel, to go to a completely different dashboard, now you're just kind of screwing up their flow. Again, they have too much stuff to look at already. Why do you want to
Tell
put
me
them
about it.
into yet another tool? Like, yeah, so that and the reason why that I know the problem is because I've seen it, I've done it, I know the problems, I've seen them. So there has to be a way for people to benefit from AI without having to buy a completely separate product. Like, yeah, that's not fair. Like, yeah, that's not fair in my opinion anyway. So that's what Q function is trying to offer, a way to be able to benefit from AI without having to completely uproot your existing cybersecurity infrastructure.
Yeah, I agree.
Mm.
Especially LinkedIn has this thing where you can be like a top security voice, and now they have these different articles you can contribute to. And it
Right.
was one of the ones I was asking me about automation, and I said, "Hey, some organizations don't need SOAR. They don't even have their SIM tuned correctly, and so you now are making them do double the work because they got to go back and forth here and here, and there's no automation even happening with this
Exactly.
with the SOAR tool. So it's like, why do you have it if they're going to do manual stuff in here?
Right. Exactly.
It's
Yeah. Yeah. So, and like I always try to market Q function as a way, we're not trying to give you value that you don't need, because if you're not collecting the proper data, if your seam isn't tuned, you can't touch this yet. People think that AI is going to, solve everything. You still need the basics of cybersecurity. You still need IT asset management. You still need to know what's on your network. You still need vulnerability management. You still need your existing infrastructure before you start going into AI based solutions. Work on your fundamentals first before you start going into AI, because as of this point, I believe that AI is going to more augment what you already have, but you have to have something first,
right,
right? It's not going to be able to say, "Hey, we're just going to solve everything." You still need a supportable infrastructure for you to gain benefit from it. And I think that vendors are just saying, "Hey, AI, you should buy it because AI, and it's AI." Like, I bought a toothbrush, HD. I bought a toothbrush that uses AI, at least according to the actual box. And I'm thinking to myself, how does my toothbrush use AI? Like, yeah, like I never will understand that. Does it have a neural network? Is it using machine learning? Is it using, like, I have no idea. Like, yeah, but the problem is it's now become a marketing term, which is known as AI washing. And AI washing is just throwing AI on something when it has no business having those letters on that, right?
yeah.
So when it comes to Q function, I don't hide it. I tell you the exact programming language that I'm using. I show you the exact code. I don't hide anything from you, because we as cybersecurity professionals, we tend to hide. Like, if you go on any marketing site, you'll notice that it's always people in black hoodies. It's always people, hackers, and behind a keyboard and all that. We need to get away from that, in my opinion, because it shouldn't be hidden. Everyone needs to know how this works, because I'm of the mindset that AI can really change how we do things, and it shouldn't be just a marketing ploy. I have two big fears with AI, and I'll get into that later if we so choose.
Okay.
It's trust and profit. Well, yeah, it's trust and profit. Um, Trust, we're it's going to be hard to establish what's true anymore. We as society now, we have a distrust with a lot of different things. We just do. We don't trust government. We don't trust our existing infrastructures. We don't trust each other. By default, we think that everyone's lying, and it's just a state of the world as of this
Zero
point.
trust.
It's zero. I know, zero trust, exactly, right? Like, zero trust. We're at a point where no one trusts anything. And AI is not going to make that easier with the rise of deepfakes, with the rise of being able to imitate people's voices. When it comes, imagine social engineering powered by AI. That's scary. That's
So
scary. Go on,
for a
yeah.
couple for a couple of weeks now on different episodes, I've
Mhm.
brought up this use case. And
Yeah.
funny enough, before the episode started, we were talking about Drake and Kendrick. And Drake did the Taylor Made freestyle with Tupac and Snoop. But we
Yes.
knew that was Drake, right? Because
Yes.
he wasn't really trying to make it sound just like Tupac and just like Snoop. But there was and I can send you the article too, but this Chinese company lost a lot of money from a deep fake with
Right.
I don't want to say it was like a video thing, but they deep fake from somebody and the attackers, they got money out of them.
Right.
Or voice voice commands or things like that, and
Yep.
tricking, something like a Siri or Google's AI assistant to
Yes.
believe that's the same person.
Yes.
There was this movie, I don't know if you've seen it. It's called I believe it's called Heist 81. I don't know, have you
I,
seen it?
I have not seen it. No. Mhm.
Okay. It's with Courtney B. Vance and I don't know the other people, but him and
Okay.
I think Angela Bassett kind of like co-produced it.
Right.
And this is before it's about they rob a bank, but it's before the banks moved to doing most of the thing on computer. Where if you needed to move $2 million, it was had to go by a voice command.
Yes.
And how these people there was no AI involved, they mimicked the voice and they were
Yes.
able to get the money. But now let's get into the part of someone using a deep fake because the AI technology is a I seen Bumble and
Yeah.
something else where talking about like your AI like interviewing your AI person. It doesn't look just like you, but it's close enough.
Yes.
So we already know most people in America probably read on a fourth, fifth grade level.
Yes.
They can't comprehend a lot. So
No.
imagine them thinking the president came out and said something, or they showed you something on TV that's not actually true, and how. And I already know this now from being a content creator. YouTube, anytime I upload a video, YouTube is asking me, "Hey, is there any type of AI generated image in this where somebody doing something that they didn't do?" They're
Yes.
asking you that now. But just think about you saying no, but it is. That's part of the. That's why I think where the other piece of security and the AI use cases come in, it's like, what are they going to do to the tech AI? And I tweeted about this too when a while ago, about 2 weeks ago. I gotta
Mhm.
find it, but I was like, we're at the point where everybody's going to have to trademark their voice, and I don't know how we do like trademark your voice, but that's what you're going to have to do.
We're going to be approaching that point, and there have been there's technical difficulties with that. Like obviously, as you already mentioned, you're effectively talking about watermarking. Like yeah, so watermarking is to be able to say, okay, like pictures, for example, we can watermark those and say, hey, this is from this person. The problem with AI generated content is that there's no good way to watermark it as of this
Yeah.
point, because one, not all AI content is just pictures. How do you watermark AI generated video?
Yeah.
That's very hard because you can't just put a frame in there like for all parts and be able to actually do that. It's very technically difficult. I do believe that eventually there will be a model that is capable of doing that, but right now that's not possible. They're still trying to figure out ways to adequately do that. And let's just say that it's mandated that hey, any AI generated content has to be watermarked, say that it actually is. Um, how are they going to enforce that? Like, because anyone I can again Qfunction does AI from just regular computer. Like, like again, I'm not doing generative AI per se, but anyone who has the technical capability can do this. Like, yeah, obviously it's in the hands of bigger companies right now. But let's say that AI generated content comes from outside of the United States. How do you enforce that? Especially with social media, because we're all global now. We don't get content from just the United States anymore. How do you tell other countries how to monitor their own AI? You can't. That's their nation. So we have a significant problem coming up. Like yeah, and right now I don't know how they're going to solve that, but it's definitely in the works to see how to
Yeah.
figure that out.
Yeah. So I definitely see that. And here was a question I actually was going to ask you too, because I was thinking about my last episode I just recorded.
Yes.
How would, well, I know what you would have did,
Mhm.
but let's say, for instance, I am the CISO of United Healthcare, and
Okay.
we pretty much lost about $1 billion due to the Change Healthcare breach.
Yeah.
What do you say to me in order to prevent that from happening again?
Ooh, that's a question. So the way that I see it is you need to know what are the crown jewels of your organization. And what I mean by that is when it comes to determining risk in in your organization, you have to know what is important because the whole point of cybersecurity is to protect your organization. As a part of that, you need to know what is critical, what is high risk, right? So when it comes to cybersecurity teams, because we're overloaded anyway, we don't have the time to actually do that because we're too busy trying to protect everything. Like,
Yes.
yeah, we need to figure out as cybersecurity professionals how to prioritize what is important. So when it comes to the you being the CEO, the CISO, I would tell them, can you figure out a way to determine what are the crown jewels of your organization and do whatever you can to protect those, right? Prioritize your defenses. Learn what's normal for your prized assets so that you can say when something deviates from that, you get an alert from that. If there's some high value individual that has the keys to all parts of your organization, you need to monitor that person because one compromise there can completely take down your entire company. You need to learn what is important for your business. And a lot of businesses don't know that. And from cybersecurity teams, we're always told protect everything, protect everything. That's fine when you have a couple of assets. A lot of companies have thousands of assets, databases, workstations, cloud computing assets. You need to know what's important and prioritize there.
Yeah. So funny enough that you said that. What we found out from doing the research of the attack was
Mhm.
there was they attacked a Citrix workspace that did not have MFA on
Okay.
it, so they were able to get in that way and
Yeah.
do some lateral movement. And at the time of the article, it said that they had actually been in the environment for about 10 days. Now,
Right.
most of us believe they probably were in the environment longer than that. That's
Yeah.
probably what they just got up to now. But that goes into where we're talking about the UEBA stuff. It's like
Yes.
for 10 days, like what are your detections looking like? And that's why I'm big on like proactively always reviewing detections
Yes.
and like you said, having a good threat intelligence team of knowing what they're doing with all these different type of I want to say the group that attacked them was the Black Cat.
It was Black Hat, if I remember
Yeah,
correctly.
the
Yeah.
Black Cat. So it's like
Mhm.
those different things happening, or like now, like even recently, like all the financial institutions pretty much kind of got blitzkrieg by Scatter Spider, where they were just trying to get anybody they possibly can get because it's not sophisticated.
No.
Theirs is just a shot, and hey, you know what? We're gonna move on from phishing. We're gonna attack you where it's easy to get you. We're gonna hit that phone, and that's
Exactly.
still one of the biggest ones to me for like kind of like mitigation purposes. It's like that phone of people really just not paying attention to things and clicking on a typo squad a domain and thinking, oh, it's something from work. And I know one of the questions I asked you was like, I don't know if it's necessarily like a Q function necessary question, but we have these different AI assistants.
Yeah.
You know, what if companies develop these, your personal, like they can't have a SOC person be with every person in the company, but what they possibly could train is some type of security AI tool, maybe on the phone that sees this email or something come in, or even, you know what? I shouldn't be saying this because I feel like Verizon, AT&T, and everybody gonna steal this, or they may already be working on it.
So it is possible. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that it's impossible because we already have that with spam filters, right? So the way that
Yeah.
spam filters work is that, they've been trained off of actual phishing emails. So they know what phishing emails look like. It's not beyond the realm of possibility to say that that can be done for phishing, voice phishing, right? Because now you'll be able to maybe have it pick up certain words, certain phrases that attackers tend to use in order to try to get information from unsuspecting employees, right? To
Yeah,
get them to
Google's pretty
review.
good at that. Like they have like,
Yeah,
possibly spam. But I'm talking
right.
about even like
Mhm,
so I mean, even on my iPhone,
mhm.
when the sloppily done type of fake scams that they send, it's a number someone doesn't recognize. It's gonna say, oh, this is, possibly junk or whatever.
Right.
But some of them, from my experience, they all came from like normal numbers, and it was not written purely poor. It was not written poorly
Yeah.
in the sense of like misspellings, but what was the context of it didn't make sense. But it looked like it was a legitimate URL, but of course we know it's not. So it's just
Yes.
like having a tool in there saying, "Hey, you never gotten a text from this person. Call
Yeah.
this number and see who it is first."
Yes.
So something like that, just to remind people, "Hey, don't just willfully click on stuff."
Exactly. Like, yes. And that's possible because, like you said, the assistants are kind of already doing that anyway. That's just more of an extension of existing functionality. Like, yeah, that's not that hard. Like, yeah, that's more of a matter of just, okay, hey, let's add on to what we all already have. When you get a potential, call or text from a number that you don't know, you'll be able to say, hey, you've never seen this before, right? That's definitely within the realm of
Yeah,
possibility. And
because
like
you
you
said,
said, I'm sure that they're already working on it. So you need to get them to pay you, HD. Yeah, for the
yeah, I need to know who I need to talk to. But I know for a fact, like you said, like if you have like a proof point or any type of messaging security service, a lot of
Right.
times it has to say, hey, you haven't talked to this person before, or like even sometimes proof point, which I hate that they do this, but it could be somebody you never communicated with sometimes, and they may mark it as like malicious, but it's like,
Right.
no, I just never talked to them before. But the contents of this is not malicious. And so what I'm seeing right now is like the phone is the biggest thing from emails like that, and then from the I think I typed something about quishing with the QR codes.
Yes.
And the hard part is about if you do it on your phone, by the time you enter in something, you were never like on the company's network.
Right.
So we just have to be okay. Now we're going to be in a deficit. We just got to pay attention to see if our rules will catch some anomaly in your login activity. So
Right.
that
Exactly. And that's again well within the realm of a possibility because I know for example, like most well actually I'll just take Azure for this example, right? They'll tell you when hey, someone
yep,
logged into this account from a location that they never have, right? Like yeah, that's basic
they're
machine
good
learning.
at that.
Yeah, exactly. So that's not yeah, they can do that. Like yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that's some of the next steps in what they're actually doing. But like when it comes to social engineering though, that's always going to be the biggest attack vector. Yeah, the biggest attack surface because what sounds better? Trying to find a 0 day for a system, like yeah, trying to make up some complex hack, or I can just call someone to give me the password. Like, yeah, I guess one of those sounds a lot easier than the other. Like, yeah, and that's it, and it works. Like, yeah,
It definitely
yeah,
works.
attackers continue to do it because it works.
Yeah, they're
Mhm.
they're social engineering all the help desk with like bad verification processes. Like
Right. Hmm.
if they know a little bit of information from somebody, they're trying to get that stuff out of there.
Right.
So I was just looking at a question, and I know earlier we were talking about vulnerability management, and then you just brought up like what a pain that most people who work in cybersecurity know about, like how asset management pretty much sucks everywhere.
Yeah.
Can Q function? Well, I guess you already kind of explained what you guys do with taking the logs and understand that thing. But what does it do on the terms of like doing security assessments and stuff like that? Of seeing like, okay, these are the things that need to be fixed. Like, how does how does Q function do stuff like that?
Right. So I will say that we don't do that right now.
Okay,
Like, yeah. So yeah, security assessments. No, we're not anywhere near that realm of possibility. And what I make sure is that I advertise exactly what I'm gonna do, and we don't do security
okay,
assessments
cool,
like
cool.
that. Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the question I was asking because that'd be definitely pretty cool. It's like it definitely could help out. Like, it's always some work to be done that people don't know that's in the backlog of
Right.
stuff to do. And I know I had a question. You kind of already said like how it works with SIM, so I'm assuming it also works with EDR tools, SOARs, anything else.
Effectively any data that you're ingesting because at the end of the day it's all data whatever you're trying to learn the normal of q function can apply machine learning to and when it comes to cyber learning that normal is starting to become increasingly important so if you're trying to say what are normal firewall logs for me right if you start seeing a lot of long running connections or maybe you see beaconing behavior AI will be able to actually detect that, right? Because again, you're collecting these logs anyway, you're just not really doing anything with them. Like, yeah, so it's more, just whatever your data set is, whatever you're trying to do yeah, with it.
Right.
Mhm.
So here, I know one of my questions was the smaller, companies, mom and pop shops, whatever. Those are oftentimes the people that don't think they need it, but like really, like they're probably one thing away from probably like their business going up in shambles just because they don't have the requisite, security protection.
Right.
How could Q Function serve like companies that don't have a big budget? They can't afford to really hire like a lot of people, or maybe they just have one IT person that's doing security, networking,
Yeah,
database, like they're doing everything. Like how
exactly.
can Q Function help them?
That's good. That's a good question. So we don't focus solely on AI. Like one of the services that we also provide is SIEM support, right? SIEM consultation. Because when it comes down to it, like you said, if it's one person, they're already overwhelmed, right? They're effectively a one-man cyber team, and you're in a losing position. You just are. Like yeah. So what we can provide is SIEM some support, SIEM consultation, how to ingest logs into your SIEM, whether it be from your important endpoints your networking software, whatever you're trying to do, in order to help those smaller businesses, right? Because a lot of them don't have the expertise to actually do that. A lot of them haven't even seen this because normally when you have those one man bands, not only are they cybersecurity, but they're also just IT in general,
Yeah.
right? Like yeah, so a lot of them don't even know what a SIEM is. They don't even know what that stands for. Like, yeah, so what Qfunction can provide is that expertise for scene consultation and, however to best architect your scene. But like I said though, for those for when it comes to AI, it's not a end all be all solution.
Right.
It's not for everybody. AI is not going to solve all your security issues. For those mom and pop shops, you are way better off making sure that you know what's on your network, that one computer or two computers, right? It's better if you're not reusing the same password across different services. It's better that, if you're dealing with banking or some type of money, you always call the person to make sure, hey, is this from you? Like, is there some type of established process that you follow in order to verify your business operations, right? You don't need AI for that. So, like, yeah, and again, that goes back to covering your basics first. Once you get your basics down for those mom and pop shops, that may be all they actually need until they grow more, and then they start needing to collect more logs and better secure it. So for those mom and pop shops, you may not need Qfunction. You just need just basic security knowledge for that. Like, yeah, but for those smaller businesses that are actually need to collect data, that's where Qfunction can provide value.
Cool, cool.
Mhm.
And I was just thinking about something because I've really never thought about this, but I assume I know they do because a client of mine actually got an I think it's this admin job or something like that with the Potter's House out here in Dallas.
Okay.
And I just thought about like churches. Like think about how many people are bringing their phones and stuff on the church network, and some churches got ATMs and they got other stuff. They may have servers and stuff there or something, but like I wonder, are they secure?
Probably not. Like, yeah, because when it comes to Wi-Fi some security, I mean, people don't know how bad it can be because what a lot of people will do, or what a lot of businesses will do, or organizations, is that they'll put everything on the same network. So the same network that people connect to for their guest Wi-Fi is the same network that they host their actual computers on. Like, yeah, they don't have like that network segregation, right? So, all I need to do is just go on your network, which you provide me the password for, because I'm assuming that it's public Wi-Fi. And now I just have wide open access to whatever you have on your network, whether it's a sensitive server, whether it's some sensitive database, right? And a lot of people, who are in those types of non-technical organizations, they may not know that certain services are accessible over the network, right? They may not see port 445 open on that Windows system. They may not see port
Hmm.
3306 open on that database. They may not see these things, so they just don't know it, right? So that's more going back to basic security hygiene, like, hey,
Right.
knowing how to better segregate your networks, like your systems on the network. But assuming that they have that, there's absolutely possibility that AI can help them, because now again you're establishing what's normal for your assets and then be able to tell you when something deviates from that. So yeah, that's absolutely possible, within the realm of
Yeah.
possibility.
I think you should start pitching to the mega churches, man.
Maybe I should. Like, yeah, I need to start taking some money from them. No, no.
It's, look, it's all tax free. Look, go talk to TD Jakes and everybody.
Exactly.
I mean, because they, I mean, of course we see the church, but they have so many other business things that they're doing
Right. Mm.
within those. They're essentially corporations, but just not taxed like it.
Exactly. Like, yeah, and that's a whole nother, subject in and of itself. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, like, man, they are yeah, I'm not even gonna get into that. Point is that yes, like, yeah, they can definitely benefit from that because they are doing business operations, like, yeah, right, on using computers. And if you're doing that, you need cybersecurity. Yes, they can absolutely benefit from that.
Okay. So I got another question for you.
Yeah.
I know that you talk about cost effectiveness.
Yeah.
And we kind of briefly talked about it, how I was saying like you kind of gave me a pitch and I was like, hey, how would you help us not lose almost $1 billion?
Right. Mm.
And then you kind of gave that answer is like we were talking about the same things. Like, okay, you guys can go pay the 10 to 20, 30 million, $50 million in payroll to get
Yes.
what you need, or you can go spend $1 billion every other couple of months because you didn't want to. And you had to pay 20 million in a ransom and still didn't get your stuff back. So it's just like you do the math.
Exactly. Like, yeah. So it's true, right? And when it comes down to it, let's talk about UEBA for a little bit more, right? So a lot of UEBA solutions aren't good. And what I mean by that is they learn your environment to an extent. Like, yeah, I have experience with a UEBA solution, and what ended up happening is that I was in a large environment. We had a lot of users and systems. So what the UEBA did is that it attempted to learn the environment, like it said. The problem is that when you are trying to learn large environments, you end up learning nothing. And the reason why is because I remember having to maintain this UEBA system, and it was like, oh, you have 1 million anomalies in your network, and you have 500,000 threats associated with systems or users in your network. I looked at that. I was like, I don't care how big my team is. We are never going to get these numbers down. Like, this is not going to happen. So these solutions try to learn your entire environment. And I don't think that's a good way of going about it, because when it comes to AI, it's better used when you have a certain focus, when you have a certain, use cases that you want to use for it. So instead of trying to learn your entire network and paying an arm and a leg to do that, why not focus on what's important for your organization? These specific
Mhm.
users, these specific systems.
Right.
Let's learn for what's normal for them and then deploy something that is targeted towards these high risk assets, and
Let's look
then be
for,
able to tell me what's normal and
data
what it can use.
exfil and stuff like that.
Exactly. Correct. Like, yeah. So that's the cost of effectiveness there. Because again, like, you don't need to, it would be nice to learn your entire network. But what's ended up happening now is that what a lot of AI tools are doing, they just generate more data. Yeah, sure. You get better visibility, but you're just generating more data. And we didn't have time to look at the data that we already had. Like, I can tell you right now, we're not gonna be able to look at the data that the AI generates. Like, yeah, I'm not going to look at 500,000 threats. I'm not going to look at 1 million anomalies, right? It needs to be focused. You need to be able to know what is important for your organization.
No, I totally agree.
Mhm,
And I know we're rounding out the end of this conversation. I wanted
mhm.
to ask you, I guess, what's next for Q Function and the
Yeah.
things that maybe they are working on, or services that they plan to start offering.
Yeah, that's a good question. So like we said, we are still focusing on threat hunting, user behavior analytics, general anomaly detection, right? In the future, we're going to start seeing more AI models. Like, yeah, AI models in general, AI models that do various things, whether they're large language models, whether they're, anomaly detection models, whatever, right? Now, a growing field is AI security, and rather specifically model security, as in, how was this model trained? Was the training data poisoned? Was it, can I extract sensitive information from this model? Can I determine the training data that this was based off of? Can I extract sensitive information from this model that was trained on sensitive data? Right? Are these models biased in any form? Eventually, I would like to for Q function to go in that direction, because I think that that's going to be a very important field going forward, especially as we continue to see more and more AI models being implemented within cybersecurity, or rather just businesses in general. Because I think effectively the next assets that are outside of servers, workstations, cloud, and computing resources are going to be AI models. I really do believe that they're going to be their own entity that need to be secured in some form, and we need to figure out how to actually do that. So I think eventually I would like Q function to go towards more that direction, or extend its capabilities in order to secure models themselves, as opposed to just creating models that detect anomalies within data. So that's where I would like to take it.
Dope, dope.
Mhm.
And you were talking, and I had one other question I thought about as you were
Mhm.
talking that I didn't ask. And it was about, I'm trying to think if I'm drawing a blank here. Man, I'm hang on, I may remember it later. Because it wasn't written down, but then I thought about it. Okay, I got it. I got it.
Yeah.
This is a question I didn't ask you, and I thought about this because I know how some companies are.
Yeah.
Because you were mentioning about how is it trained and what's the data poison and all this stuff.
Yeah.
I know a lot of companies' apprehensions when it comes to AI is about who's going to have access to the data.
Yes.
How do you answer a question like that when proposing Q functions solutions to a company that's worried about what will you be able to see from their data?
Yeah, absolutely. So one, like I said, Qfunction doesn't hide anything. We show you the exact process that we're actually using. We show you the data that we're going to be training off of because you're the one who provides it. Two, we tell you exactly how it's going to be trained, right? The actual algorithms that are actually used. Three, we tell you exactly how it's going to be deployed because Qfunction, the whole goal is for us to not be able to host anything in our own environments. We want everything to be done in your environment. We're not trying to assume any more risk than we need to as well. So to address your question, HD, the whole point is just transparency to tell you exactly how this model is being used, the data that is being trained off, where it's being deployed, and who has access to it. I think that one of the like you said, one of the biggest obstacles to AI is just that data governance, right? Who has access to this, and being able to tell them upfront exactly how it's working, as opposed to saying, "Oh, this AI model is hosted in the cloud somewhere." No, this is in your environment. You know exactly who has access to that, and you can secure it using your existing controls. Right. And I think that's what gives Qfunction a leg up over other software vendors who use AI, because a lot of vendors who use AI don't tell you anything about it. They just tell you that it uses AI and that's it, right? So you need to be able to explain to businesses, how you're doing what you're doing, and a lot of vendors don't do that. They'll put AI on things and be able to say, "Oh, we're doing AI for this, that, and the other," with when they themselves don't even understand what the repercussions are of that. So I think that transparency is going to be really huge going forward, and that's what Qfunction utilizes.
Dope, dope. Glad you smoked that. I can tell you've been working on your presentation. But
Absolutely.
are there any last things that you want to leave?
Absolutely. Yeah. So one, just visit the website, qfunction.ai. I try to make it as bright as possible. It's not a typical hacker cybersecurity site. Look at the blog. I have examples of using machine learning algorithms on there. You can see various threat hunts that I performed on there. I even have code on GitHub illustrating the code that I'm using, right? The whole point of this is transparency so that cybersecurity professionals can know how this can benefit them, because this is the way that things are going forward. You can't escape it. Cat's out of the bag now. But you need to understand how AI works, because if you don't, you will either be behind the curve or someone will take advantage of you in terms of your knowing or not knowing it.
And that's been another episode of the TechTual Talk podcast, guys. If you enjoyed this episode, learning about how AI can help enhance your security operations or your overall posture, then please go check out Qfunction. Their URL is qfunction.ai. I'll have it in the description, and you can reach out to Ron also on LinkedIn. But I appreciate everybody for tuning in. And like I always say, let's stay textual. And until next time, we out. Peace.